We just ran that report, Marjorie, about these congressional stock traders. We found out you did not beat the S&P 500, which I guess maybe you're proud of, but maybe not so happy about.
I actually asked my team about that today, why my name was on the list, because I don't even own any stocks, and I haven't all of 2023. As a matter of fact, we have to report everything, including children who are dependents of ours. And I think what was reported was actually related to my son's account that his father and I had set up for him years ago.
There's reason to believe that Congresswoman Marjorie Greene is lying about that, and we'll get to why I believe that's the case in just a moment. But you just heard her claim that this latest report about her investments just barely underperforming the S&P 500 is a lie. She's denying that that's the case. She says she's not invested in the stock market personally, and that it sets her apart from several of her colleagues in the Senate and House of Representatives who actually outperformed the S&P 500, according to the latest report by Unusual Whales. Now, it's important to get to the details of that report in just a moment. We definitely will. But for now, let's talk about Greene specifically. Here's how her investments measured up to the SPY or SPY ETF, which ends up tracking the S&P 500, okay? So if you look at this, what you'll find in the highlighted section, SPY was up by 24.8% this year. Greene's investments were up by 18.6%. But what about her claim that she doesn't own any stocks, her denials here? Well, you won't be surprised to find out that she's not quite telling the truth. To Greene's credit, Unusual Whales doesn't list any new transactions out of Greene's portfolio for the duration of 2023, though the MAGA politician has made more than a handful of purchases since she took office in 2021 and doesn't seem to have sold them. That probably explains why she ranked on the list, which measures overall returns for the year, not transactions. So the argument is that, she bought stocks and held on to them, and her stocks tend to be doing really well. But it turns out that there might be more here that she's lying about. Okay, so Greene shares 3 children, Lauren, Taylor, and Derek, with her former husband, Perry Greene. Previous disclosure filings by Greene show her children own some shares. House members can disclose ownership of assets, indicating if they are owned by themselves, their spouse, or dependent children. Something else I want to just quickly note is that as we approach election year, the stock trading activity by members of Congress slows down considerably, mostly because they're looking to get reelected and they don't want to draw negative attention to themselves by, engaging in trades that make it abundantly clear that they're engaging in insider trading. But Unusual Whales also responded to Greene's denials during that conversation with Jesse Waters, and they say that she is disclosed as the owner in most of her public stock disclosures or joint with her husband, not her son. She also famously said war is incredibly profitable before buying war stocks before the Ukraine war. And in that regard, she's just like way too many other politicians, which we'll get to in just a moment. But first, John, I am super curious to hear your thoughts on this.
Yeah, I have a few. So look, if she were almost any other politician, I would say easiest explanation is that she is lying. But I think that we need to be fair to the Congresswoman. In this particular case, it's also possible that she is just utterly confused about stock ownership and doesn't remember that she bought them or whatever. Maybe she forgot the password to her Fidelity account, I don't know. So it is possible that this is not just lying. Beyond that, I would say she is, because she's actually below the ETF performance for this year, I would be more worried about how exactly it is that some people on this list were outperforming it twice over, 3 times over, 10 times over. I'd be more worried about that. I would also have used this as an opportunity. I understand why Jesse Waters wasn't going to do this, to say, since clearly you all think that this is what the economy is, why are you not more excited about the fact that it was going up by 25% in a single year? That is amazing performance. It's not the sort of economic performance that necessarily translates to gains for regular Americans, But this is the sort of stuff that they always turn to. They say bring Trump back into office because the stock market's going to go through the roof. Stock market is doing apparently very well according to the measures that Unusual Whales is using that in that, and they just totally skip over that. The fact that some people are pulling in these massive returns, I think it's weird to just ignore that.
I totally agree with you. It is pretty insane how well the stock market is performing. I'm curious what's behind that. It could be the inflation, meaning higher prices. Remember, we've covered stories of executives from various corporations during their shareholder meetings bragging about how they've kind of piggybacked off of the inflation rhetoric in the media to just raise their prices, even though they didn't really need to, just a way to increase their corporate profits. So yeah, I mean, there could be many factors there, but you're right. I mean, it isn't really something that you see the Biden administration get credit for, which I'm not really too happy with the Biden administration at the moment, not because of the stock market. I think the stock market is fine, whatever. It's obviously performing really well. But you do make a really good point about how there are these comparisons made between the stock market under Trump and how great it was and how terrible it is allegedly under Biden. That's clearly not the case. So we gotta be fair, credit where credit is due. But let's pivot to the rest of the corrupt goons in Congress. Without further ado, here is some extremely disturbing data from the report by Unusual Whales. 2023 saw over $1 billion in financial transactions disclosed by Congress when taking the maximum disclosed amounts. Members of Congress are only required, by the way, to disclose a range of how much they're trading, not the exact amount. So the range is between 1,000 and 15,000. Overall, the portfolios belonging to Democrats have outperformed the portfolios belonging to Republicans. The S&P 500 had a great year, as we just talked about, 24.3%. It's up 24.23%. And SPY itself is up 24.81%. However, Democrats came out on top significantly, returning, John, get a load of this, 31.18% due to their heavy tech portfolios. Republicans returned around 18%, which is still pretty freaking great. So any thoughts on that?
I'd be mad if I had gotten the 18 and the other side of the aisle had gotten 30, I'd be pretty mad. That could be a pretty significant amount of money. Either way, that is massively outperforming what the stock market is generally supposed to average out to on a yearly basis. It is great performance and should be real cause for alarm. Look, if people, like if everyone out there had the resources to own stock and they were all benefiting at the same time, then maybe we'd be having a different conversation. But when generally only those who are already doing incredibly well under the economic status quo are gonna benefit from that sort of performance, and then on top of it, you add the insider information that they have, I think it is great that we are covering this and that Unusual Whales did that report, because like we've been discussing this for years now, and literally nothing has been done. And I think it's crazy that under both Democrats, remember the Republicans, when they were running to take over the House, were saying, oh, look at Nancy Pelosi, she won't change the rules, she's corrupt. And what have they done?
Look, members of Congress who claim they want to do something about this, I do think that there are a select few who actually do want to rein this in. I think Representative Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez is serious about this. But others only pay lip service, and when push comes to shove, Nancy Pelosi is a good example, really have no interest in passing laws that would prevent the insider trading from happening. And that's really the issue here, right? It's the added corruption. We already have a problem with unfettered campaign donations flowing into the campaign coffers of our politicians. That clearly impacts their decision making, it clearly corrupts them. But I would venture to say that trading individual stocks is even worse, because we're talking about people who not only have inside information that they're free to trade on, something that would be illegal for us, we'd go to prison for it. But on top of that, if they are already invested in various corporations or companies, and then they're tasked with passing legislation, is anyone really under the impression that they would pass legislation that would regulate these companies and in any way impact their bottom line? Of course not, because they have a vested interest in increasing and protecting the profitability of these companies. It's sick. There's obviously a conflict of interest here. And by the way, according to Unusual Whales and their report, 32 members of Congress beat the S&P 500 this year. They beat it. I guess 32 members of Congress are so brilliant. They're more brilliant than hedge fund managers, bringing in higher returns than hedge fund managers on Wall Street are. And remember, SPY rose around 25% this year before you take a look at this graph. So let's take a look at this. Representative Brian Higgins got a mind-boggling, I can't even believe this is insane, 238.9% return. Not fishy at all, everyone, not fishy at all. Even Representative Nancy Pelosi, who you'll notice is also on this list, has a return of 65.5%. Couldn't match the number that we're seeing from Brian Higgins. And Pelosi, of course, has stood in the way of passing legislation having to do with reining this in. But anyway, final words on this, John?
Yeah, final words. Look, obviously, we cannot assume that all of their investments were in this or whatever. I'm sure that they're diversified. Some of their investments might have gone down, but like, can you conceive of getting a return like that year over year? And it's not like they're investing $3,000 or anything. These are already wealthy people. That is absolutely massive. I think, like, how is this a thing that every reporter isn't constantly asking them? And I know what they would say, like, the politicians. If you could not benefit from insider information, then why would anyone bother to become a congressperson? And I understand that concern. I'm sure we can find some other reason though. It's crazy. I would say, look, there are a lot of forms of corruption that I think are more subtle and perhaps harder to get people to really understand, harder to get them fired up about, harder to reform. This is the most base level corruption. And until we get past this, like, the entire thing is basically a joke. This really feels like they're spitting in our eye in not reforming this. Remember, they would still be able to buy mutual funds. They would still be able to buy like index funds and tracking funds and things like that. We're only saying that they cannot purchase individual stocks. And even that is a step too far for them.
If you enjoyed this video, that's because of our members. They make us independent, they make us strong, and they make us honest. Become a member today by hitting the join button below.
My way onto this frequency.
This better be critical, Wheelie.
So, come on, what is it not, please? Okay, couple of things. I'm running low on the dough. I was thinking about taking a couple of months sick leave, maybe starting today. And oh yeah, I intercepted a transmission from Megatron.
Then send it through.
Yes, sir, right away, sir. And so I'll assume that we're good on the other stuff.
This is your last warning, insects. Relinquish what remains of the Allspark.
So who's the insect? You? What? Who's the insect?
Protect you. They were defeated on our world, and we will defeat them here.
The Megatron.
This was just a diversion. Security teams, bring them up. Rabbit, she's already inside. Deeds! Give me an update on that reserve. Boss readiness. What was his name? What was it?
Evac, sir.
Right, evac.
She's right in front.
We're facing a heavy sustained attack. They appear to be after the All-Star craft.